For the sake of this interview, could you please state your name and where you live?
Francis James Giuliano at 159 Old Chatham Road, Orleans, Massachusetts.
Okay.
As a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I really didn't think about it.
So how was your life growing up?
My life growing up was, to me, not difficult, but to some people they might think so. I grew up with the divorced parents and lived in my grandmother's attic on my mother's side from the time I was 5 years old until I was 13. Then I went into my grandmother's attic on my father's side, which is about 3 miles away, until I went into the Navy as a teenager of 18 years old.
Would you like to explain to us your high school experience?
My high school experience was very good. First of all, I was on the honor roll. Secondly, I was on the varsity basketball team, and I was captain of the team in my senior year. We had a very, very good team. The school I went to was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, called Rindge Technical High School. It was a very strong academic and sports high school.
So how did you feel when war was declared, and how old were you?
I really remembering that this was the Korean War that I went into. When I was younger than that, of course, World War II broke out in December '41, and I was only, I was 10 years old. And so I was already used to the idea of war. All my uncles went into the service, and also my father went into the Navy. And they all fought in World War II.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted. There was a draft. When I enlisted, there was a draft. And as a matter of fact, many students were taken out of college in their freshman and sophomore years, being drafted into the armed forces for the Korean War.
Why did you enlist?
I enlisted because I had joined the National Guard as a 17-year-old in Boston, and I knew that the National Guard in the Second World War from Massachusetts was called up very early in the war to serve full time, and so I didn't want to go in the Army. I preferred going in the Navy. My father had been in the Navy, and to get out of the National Guard, you had to join the armed forces of another service. Then you'd get honorably discharged and you would be taken into the new service. I was a basketball player. I broke my arm in the third game of my senior year. We had a very, very good team, and I was a leading scorer on the team for 3 years in a row, from the time I played my first varsity game as a sophomore. So I thought I was going to get a scholarship to Georgia Tech for basketball. When I broke my arm, I was out for the season. I knew that was all done, and I didn't want to go in the National Guard in the Army, so I joined the Navy. One other thing here to understand is the state of Massachusetts at that time said, if you are on the honor roll and it's past January 1, you can join the armed forces and you will get your diploma as though you stayed until June for graduation. So that's why I joined the armed forces.
So when you were in the Navy, were you on ground fighting, hand to hand, or were you on a ship in Korea?
After I got out of boot camp, which was 11 weeks in Newport, Rhode Island, I went on a ship. 2 days after I went on that ship, we headed for Korea into a combat zone. and that takes care of that question, I guess.
How did your family feel when you enlisted?
My parents were divorced. My father had been in the Navy. It was not anything that was of concern to them. Don't forget, it was right after the Second World War. All my uncles and cousins had gone into the Second World War, so it was a normal, natural thing that nobody. It was a very patriotic country at that time.
So how prepared do you believe you were physically and mentally?
When you're 18 years old, I don't think that you worry about it too much. And I was mentally fine with it. I was excited to go in the Navy, and I was excited to go on a ship, and I was excited to be shipped out right away 2 days after I got on that ship, and because that ship was going around the world after it did a tour of duty in Korea.
What was running through your mind when you first saw battle?
Well, when the first indication that we were in a place that could be harmful was when we got into the battle zone. The very first morning, the alarm went off for all hands to man their battle stations. It was a very tense moment in our minds. We didn't know that that was just a drill, because it wasn't a drill, but every morning from then on, while I was in the battle zones, we had to go to battle stations very early in the morning, because that was the time of day that an airplane could come in, the sun being just right, and get in close to us and surprise us with an attack. So every morning that we were in Korea, we had battle stations at daybreak.
So what exactly was your job?
I was a machinist mate. When I first went on the ship, I was what they call I was new, and I didn't have a ranking. I was called a fireman in the engine room. My job in the engine room, in the beginning, when you're the lowest guy, the last guy in there, you have to shine a lot of brass, keep the floors clean, dump the garbage, which I thought was the most dangerous thing I did in the war, on the back of the fantail every night on the midnight watch. So after I learned what was going on, and I got promoted to a fireman first, because you start off with 2 little stripes for as a fireman apprentice. Then when I became a fireman, I was able to man machinery or equipment, and during battle stations, I was put in a group which was in an area of the ship where we were expected to put out any fires or any problems that a bomb might hit us or a mine in the waters, and I was in that department for the battle station.
What type of ship were you on?
I was on a 2200 class destroyer. The name of the destroyer was the USS Beatty, and it was a fairly modern ship. It had been built toward the middle of the Second World War, and it had already been in many battles in the Second World War.
And over as a whole, what was your mission over in Korea? What were you supposed to do?
Of course, we weren't totally, briefed on what our total mission was, but basically our mission was, number one, to pick up any downed flyers, because the Russians and the American fighter planes were fighting overhead, and we were to go after any downed flyers and pick them up from the water and save them. Other than that, on a normal basis, we were shore bombarding the whole Korean coastline and supporting troops that were on the ground, and they would direct where they needed us to send out. We had twin-mounted guns, which were called 5-inch guns. They were like, big, they could go 15 miles once you shot them. And we would support the troops on the ground if they were being attacked with any equipment, arms, or anything like that. We also, those 5-inch guns also could shoot down airplanes. They were very good anti-aircraft guns. And we would also act as anti-aircraft if the Russians, MiGs, tried to come after us.
So when you were like steaming off the coast of Korea, did you encounter any like minefields or anything?
That was probably the most dangerous thing we had. There were hundreds and hundreds, thousands of mines that were floating around loose, and or they were just under the surface, and they could blow your bow off or sink the ship if you hit them. We would come across them, and we would sink them as we found them, and they were that was a daily chore.
How did you sink them?
We usually used our 20-millimeter machine guns to sink them. The possibility was always there that they could blow up if you hit the right location, but most of the time they would fire between the spokes and get some holes in them so that they would sink.
So how did your some of your experiences change you as a person?
I don't think I changed much as a person. I liked the Navy. We went through the Suez, we went through the Panama Canal, going to Japan and Korea, and we came back through the Suez Canal. So by the time I was 19 years old, I had been around the world. I had visited Paris, Rome, many European capitals, and I had 3 more years to do in the Navy. And that ship would go to the Mediterranean to join the 6th Fleet for 6 months every year. So, for a young fellow, I was being paid, I saved money, and I enjoyed my life in the Navy.
Was there ever a time that you were really close to dying while you were on the ship?
No. We did have 2 days out of Newport, we hit a hurricane, and we had 2 of our crew get thrown overboard, and we never did find them. And we had to continue on after a period of time. We also had an experience with some of the volunteers. Some of the crew were volunteered to go ashore and to do some work, some secret work in scouting, and they went under fire, and they came back to the ship before they ever got to shore. We had those kind of experiences. We hit a lot of tough weather at times, and we had injuries aboard the ship, but we never got hit by anything that would sink the ship or anything like that. We were the first ships over there from the Atlantic Fleet, and the first ships back.
What was your favorite memory of the war?
My favorite memory of the war?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I had a favorite memory other than going to Rome and Paris and all the cities where we would go into the countries and have allowed shore duty, shore leave. It was exciting.
So, how did you and your fellow soldiers feel about the war? Did you like it, or did you not like it?
Well, I liked the Navy. Obviously, there were times, I suppose, when you were a little frightened, but you know, when you're 18 years old, it's pretty easy to just go on with your life there. And I enjoyed being out to sea in the ship and travel all over the world. And I have to say, it's one of the better things I did in my life.
So, how were holidays different while you were traveling?
Holidays? Nobody thought about holidays unless you were in the States and the holiday meant you had a weekend leave. Holidays were just another day.
So how much did you think about what you were actually fighting for?
Well, you have to remember the times. We were very, very patriotic in this country. And we, you know, as a country, we were fighting for our existence in World War II. So you just, you knew that this was a patriotic thing to do, and you felt good about yourself and about the country for doing it.
Do you think everyone should have to serve 2 years in the military? Or in the armed forces?
I think it's the best thing that could ever happen to our young people is to go into the military, into the service of the country for at least 2 years. First of all, you'll learn a lot. Secondly, it's a great experience regardless of where you are or what you're doing. And you get good comrades, and you're ready to come out and go to school. Of course, we were rewarded in those days, and still do, reward people who go into the military. When they come out, they can go to school on what we call a GI Bill, and they can go to school for pretty near nothing and get paid while they're going.
So do you think...
And I did get paid while I was going to school.
So do you think, like, everyone, adding on, do you think everyone should have to serve, or should serve?
There are countries in this
women?
world, in Europe, that everyone has to go in and serve as young people. And in my opinion, it's a great experience. It teaches the young people a lot of things that they would not learn otherwise. It's a chance to get out from under your mother's skirts and get out there and learn what's going on in the world and be on your own.
You think women should have to do it as well?
Women want to do it. They're the ones that push to do it, and they are doing it right now.
How was it like readjusting to your daily life after coming back from Korea?
It wasn't too difficult. I immediately went to work in a job that I had lined up by my mother to work in a construction company. So I worked the very first day I was home. And then when I worked all through the time. I got out in March, and I started school in September. So I worked every day up until I went to school.
Where did you go to school?
I went to the University of Massachusetts in Amherst.
What did you study?
I was a business major. Specifically, I was a financial business major.
What advice would you give to those who would like to join the military?
I would give them the advice that if they go in with the right attitude, there's a lot to learn, and particularly when you're younger, it's a good way to get started with life and learn and figure out what you want to do after that. It's also a big incentive to go to school after you get out, and particularly now with the price of college so high, to be able to come out and go to school for nothing and pick your school is not a bad situation. The advantage of that is also you're usually a couple of years older than a lot of the class. And businesses like that fact that you're a couple of years older. You're more ready to go to work and get serious, and usually that little edge of being a couple of years older helps you in your new job as you go forward.
So, did any of your kids join the military?
I had 2 sons that went to the United States Naval Academy, which obviously if you have the ability to get into the United States Naval Academy or Air Force or Coast Guard or Army, I would say that that's not a bad option. I'm obviously prejudiced for Coast Guard or Navy.
Mm-hmm.
So, after you got out of college, was UMass a 4-year college? Did you go for 4 years?
I went for 4 years and I got a finance degree in business, and I went to work for a company called Continental Can Company as a trainee.
So what did you do in that company?
Well, I was a trainee for industrial sales, and after 9 months they sent me for my territory in the state of Michigan. And I sold the territory to all of the major corporations in Michigan, mostly General Motors operations, for 4.5 years.
Do you feel that after all that happened to you during the military that it affected how you worked?
Absolutely. I was ready to be serious and go to work. I also got married after I was in school, and I had a child when we graduated. We had a child together, and I was serious. I had a family to support, and I had lots of job offers, and I think I had more job offers because of my age, because of my experience in the Navy, and the times were good. It was 4 years after the Second World War, and then also after Korean War, and the country was in need of people to work.
So did you have any jobs after that job?
Yes. Because of my record in the first company I went to, the largest paper company in the world, offered me a job to become a sales manager, which I did do. And I worked in that company over a period of 10 years and worked my way up until I was the corporate vice president of the company, running 3 worldwide divisions of the company.
Was that your last job?
No, I was, while I was in that job, I decided that a college degree was very good, but it seemed like all young people that were ambitious were getting master's degrees. So I decided to go at 38 years old, to go back to school and get a master's degree from what I thought was the #1 financial school in the world, the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. And I did get that degree, and before I even finished the school, I was recruited to run a public company.
So how many children did you have?
I had 4 children, and that, of course, created the situation where I have 12 grandchildren as of now.
And while they were young, did you talk to them about joining the armed forces?
I think I probably have, and I've hinted to them and talked to them, and they have examples. They have 2 of my sons as examples to look at, to see what it did for them and how intelligent they were, and what it did for their life.
So earlier you talked about how you had, when you were younger, you had your uncles and father join the military. What,
Yes,
were they in World War One or two?
they were in World War II. They were enlisted people. Nobody in my family ever got educated or ever went for education other than me, on both sides of my family. All my uncles, all my cousins, nobody had educated themselves. I took advantage of the fact that it was a good deal to go, and it was free. I was being paid to go. I had enough money to not only go and pay my college tuition, I could have a car and do other things and take care of myself.
So, was the economy good during the war times?
Sure, it was good because everybody was working because production was needed for the war effort. Everybody was patriotic. There were shortages of food, butter, things that you had to have actual stamps for to buy. There were priorities for corporations and businesses and the war effort and the armed forces and so forth. They had to come first.
So now, what do you do now? I know you're retired and
I'm supposed to be retired, but I use my skills and my savings to invest my money in businesses and things that might enhance my income.
so are you involved in the stock market? Do you buy and sell stocks?
I do. I do, and I do it fairly successfully. I was a finance major, as you know, and then I got a master's degree in finance. I watch it. I spend a lot of time watching the market and deciding which companies in the world I want to put some investment in. And I still do that. And I'm going to be 82 years of age,
So,
February.
do you think in the stock market is there a pattern that you need to follow, or is there a way to like win, to sell your stocks and
There's no set way to win.
or to predict how?
And it's not a place for people who don't understand what's going on in industry, government, and in the world in general. Because the more knowledge you have about what's going on in the world, and the more knowledge you have what's going on in this country and industry, and the types of industries, and you gather lots of information. You have to be educated to be able to do that properly.
So, speaking about what's going on in the world right now, how do you feel about the war on terrorism?
Well, I think it's a necessary thing. There's nothing else we can do. If people are attacking us, we have to protect ourselves. So it's better to be fighting the war on terrorism in some other country than right in our own backyard. If we wait long enough, we may be fighting them right in our own backyard.
And speaking about technology, there are a lot of new automatic systems and robots and whatnot in the military. How does all the advancements in the military make you feel from when you were back in the day to now?
Well, there's always been advancements in the military. All the way back, you can go back past the Civil War days. There were different types of guns after the Civil War than there were in the Civil War. How fast you could load them, how accurate they were for shooting, and so forth. So advancement in military items has been going on, and fortunately in this country we have stayed in front of these advancements, so that we've always had the best to fight with if we had to fight.
And when someone says the word Korea or brings up that word, how does that make? What is the first thing you think of?
Well, the first thing I think of is the Korean War was another one of those wars that it's a shame the way the outcome came. If you look at Korea today, you'll see the allies to us in the Korean War do very well. They build cars, they're an industrial nation, they're independent, and then you just go over the border on the second half of the country, and the North Koreans, and they're under a dictatorship. They have no future the way it is. All their money is going into paying troops and maintaining a big military and being isolated from the rest of the world. So this is what the difference is between democracy and a dictatorship. And is still an example in this day and age of the difference. Just look at Korea.
So, why did you agree to do this interview with me and Brian?
Because I expect my grandchild to pay me $10,000 after we finish. As a no, I'm kidding. You should scout that out.
That's
So,
Yeah,
I would have agreed to do this interview with any young people that wanted to
yeah.
have this interview me on this.
To give them insight about, like, what war was like, and to
Well,
learn.
to give them also the benefit of what I thought about going into the military, and what I thought about my education, and how it all came about. I had no way to go to school other than either a basketball scholarship, which I once I hurt my arm, that kind of went by the boards, and the other was to go in the military, come out and get an education, and start my life.
Okay, thank you.
We would like to thank you for your time.
You're welcome.